is up, everybody? Welcome into a very special Halloween edition of Hoops 360. And then on today's edition of the show, we are talking some massive and very important WNBA CBA updates. Plus, we are just a couple days away from the start of the college basketball season. So who do we think could be contenders for National Player of the Year, and some teams to watch as we enter the college season? And in the spirit of the college season, we'll be catching up with Notre Dame's KK Bransford. So hear what she has to say about her team and her teammate, Hannah Hidalgo. So before we get into it, we want to get you involved into this show. Our fans, our listeners, our supporters, whether today is your very first day listening to the show, first of all, welcome. Thanks so much. Or if you've been listening since the beginning, appreciate you as well. We want to hear your insight, any questions, any comments, and reactions to any of the conversations that we have here on the show. Let us know. So send us an email at hoops360@yahoosports.com. So we will try to answer any and all of your questions and dive into some things that are on your minds as our fans of these leagues and our listeners of this podcast. So send us a message again. That is hoops360@yahoosports.com, HOOPS360@yahoosports.com. Send us an email. Now let's get into it, because today is October 31st, spooky season, happy Halloween, and also the WNBA CBA deadline. But as of yesterday, October 30th, the WNBA and the WNBPA, the Players Association, have agreed to a 30-day extension to continue those CBA negotiations and work toward a deal where both sides are happy. Cass, I will start with you. What does this extension mean in your eyes?
Well, there's a history of extensions in the WNBA, or at least continuing negotiations past this deadline. I think it makes it really hard to negotiate a CBA within the season. This gives them an extra buffer. There's a 30-day extension. They will continue talking, but the league or the players do have an opt-out, they said, within that agreement, that they can give 48 hours notice to decide to strike. I think the notable thing, if they do decide to strike, is that they do not have access to team facilities. And we're seeing a lot more players stay stateside, take advantage of that. What I have heard kind of all week was that an extension was probably coming. There were certain things the players wanted to see to agree to that extension. In talking kind of to both sides, there's still a lot of confidence that a deal can get done. It sounds like they are just continuing to talk through things. I do know that there were multiple meetings this week, including one on Wednesday, and I believe Thursday as well.
I mean, I don't think anybody is surprised, in this happening, like Cass said. Like, there's a history of it. Plus, we just knew what was happening and kind of the atmosphere of negotiations these past few weeks. And it didn't seem like it was going in a positive direction. It didn't seem like the players felt, like they were being valued in what the league and the owners were offering to them. So I'm wondering, just, is 30 days enough, though? Is that enough to bridge the gap of how far it seems to be? I go to, more of Napheesa Collier's comments that she made more recently, talking about the amount of money that Caitlin Clark has made in this league is insane, yet she's getting 0% because we have no revenue share. That right there, the Caitlin Clark, Asia Wilson, Arike Gumbawale, like so many superstars that have brought money to this league. And so it just doesn't seem like, to me from the outside looking in, that 30 days is enough. I also feel like with that termination option, it kind of lets us know that, yes, and if at any point we feel disrespected enough, we can call this thing over. And so, yeah, it just kind of puts me really on notice, on a bit of caution. Are they going to reach an agreement? I don't know. And this didn't make it seem like it was any clearer that one was going to happen. I think the best thing that I heard was you saying, Cass, that, you believe both sides want to make it happen, because that's important.
To your point, Ice, it's a totally fair concern, because it was not that long ago that it felt like the league itself and the players had never been more divided after Fee's comments in her exit interviews. But I think the 30-day extension does give me a little bit of optimism, because if they wanted the extension to be longer, they could have made the extension longer. Back in 2019, when they were negotiating the current CBA the WNBA is still operating under, They had a 60-day suspension and then added another 2-week suspension onto that. So if they felt like they were more than 30 days away, they could have extended it even more. So having that 30-day suspension tells me that both sides are committed to making this work. And that's not to say that they're going to get it resolved in 30 days. And if they don't, then we have much bigger issues in our hands. But I think that the 30-day suspension tells me that, okay, we are all willing to continue to work together, and we all are feeling a sense of urgency to get this done. But you mentioned the 48-hour termination period. Cass, break that down for us, what that means, and what that could potentially, how they could potentially throw a wrench into some of these negotiations.
One thing about this offseason that is different from 2019 that I think plays into what both you guys are saying is there should be quicker deadlines and a sense of urgency in this postseason, not irregardless of what everyone is fighting for, because you do have those expansion drafts and you have the draft lottery and you have all these free agents. So I think a 30-day extension right now is saying we do need to get this done. And that's kind of what Cathy Engelbert has said all along. Obviously, there is wiggle room with an extension, but certainly the league is probably thinking only so much. I do wonder if that's why they didn't just say, okay, we have 2 more months to figure it out. Like, that's a lot of time. As for the 48-hour deadline there, they can decide that they want to strike at that point. And then, you go into a work stoppage. It would be the first work stoppage in WNBA history. I will say when I asked about what would happen if an agreement was not made or if an extension was not agreed to, that's called just kind of negotiating status quo. Everything is just kind of as it is. And that's what's happened in the past when there hasn't been as much attention. But when I spoke to someone and said, well, what would a work stoppage look like? Can players access facilities? I was told by this person, we don't think that's going to happen. We are negotiating as if we will come to a deal.
And it's my understanding of status quo that is just like, okay, just act like everything is the same. We'll just continue to operate under the current CBA. That players, and it's my understanding, can still continue to come into facilities. They can get treatment done. They can work out. They can use the weight rooms. They can be present within their organizations. But if you're operating under a status quo, at any moment, either side can decide to strike or lock out, correct?
That's my understanding, yeah.
So what would a lockout do? Because, yes, we have time before the season starts. And I do think that it would be, I don't want to say irreparable damage on the league if we missed games, but it would be pretty darn close to it. I think it would be horrific for this league if we get to the point where we're actually missing games because the WNBPA and the WNBA can't come to an agreement with the CBA. We're a long way away from that. But what would a lockout right now over the next, let's just say the remainder of 2025 mean for this league?
Well, I think if you're looking at it long term, like the remainder of 2025, I don't think there would be that much impact. There's players probably taking a relief period. Let's say they sign January 1st. That's no different than any other season we've seen a CBA go longer. I think that a work stoppage, though, if it goes into the season, if it starts affecting off-season things, like usually that doesn't bode well for a league. I know Ice and I have kind of talked about this before, but I do think, especially from what we saw at All-Star and some of the polls and kind of polling that has been done, there's just a different approach to WNBA players. I think a lot of people do look at their salaries in comparison to other leagues and understand what they're fighting for and believe that they should have more. So I do think they have more support on their side than, say, an MLB player who's making $50 million a year. Your everyday American, especially facing more serious issues than this in the world right now, cannot compare to that, but they can maybe compare a little bit more to a WNBA player. But certainly it will probably have an impact on things like viewership and attendance and goodwill.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to be a step backwards. It's not a step backwards in terms of what the players are fighting for or what they are trying to accomplish. That at all is not a step backwards. But I think that a lockout would be, though. if we're missing out on games and opportunities to, like you said, Cass, continue to bring in all the things that have grown in this league in the last 2 to 3 years. I think too about the new TV deal, right? And the billion of dollars that comes with that. And just so certain things that are bigger numbers now, you know that the key to success is making sure that more eyeballs and more people are tuned into the sport. And so I don't know if that exists with less games, right? And I believe that none of us want that to happen, from media to the players to owners. Like, everyone wants the W to play. I think too, also, like, the league just expanded so much about the basketball side of it, right? Rule changes to the amount of games that we played last season, to how the finals looked at being a 7-game series. So all of these steps have allowed the league to grow and to blossom. I just don't want a lockout to happen. And then it's kind of like you're fighting against yourself to get people back in seats. The other side, though, I will say, is kind of like the anything worth waiting for, you know? And I also wonder if some of the fans will rally in that and being like, yeah, guys, like, you don't play until they give you what you want. And when you do play, we will be seated down, pink wigs and all, ready to rock. So I'm also wondering if in terms of being a fan, like, yes, you miss seeing your favorite players play, but you know they're fighting for something bigger. I wonder how the WNBA fans will respond to this.
This is not apples to oranges comparison, but back in 2020, when the pandemic hit and sports shut down, Kathy Engelbert and the WNBA were very insistent that they needed to have a product on the floor that year for exactly what Ice is talking about. You can't go an entire year plus without playing games and being in front of fans and them seeing you on TV. And I think looking back, to put that on the court, it was not perfect by any means, the bubble season, but to make sure that that happened has allowed the situation that we're in now, where we're talking about all of this expansion and growth and viewership and all of that.
Staying in the headlines, staying at the forefront of people's minds, staying in a story is so pivotal when you're talking about sustained success, which is, I think, a point of a concern for Kathy Engelbert and the WNBA of sustaining the level of success. That how can we not just continue this, but double down and continue to grow the sport? I do understand that from the league perspective, that they've experienced so much growth overnight. How in the world could we possibly sustain this? Well, stepping away out of the public eye is a great way to take steps back. And I'm saying that, and like, you're hurting your league if you're doing that. But I do love the point, Ice, about how the fans will respond, because I do feel like this has galvanized the league. I don't think that we have seen a united front amongst players like this ever before in any sport. That we have Napheesa Collier. You brought up her comments about Caitlin Clark and how much money that she's making. When do we hear players talking about other players deserving more money when those players aren't even on their team? Like, Napheesa Collier is not just advocating for Caitlin Clark when she's saying that. Napheesa Collier is advocating for so many players in this entire league as a whole for earning what they're worth. So it's not only a galvanizing way to bring the fans together to really cheer for these players to get what they're fighting for. I think it's also been a wonderful way for the players in the league itself to really support one another and the efforts that the WNBA is trying to make. So November 30th, that's the new day. We've been talking about October 31st for months and months and months. November 30th is the new day, the new CBA deadline. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. And of course, we'll keep you updated on the latest that we hear on CBA negotiations over the next several weeks. But before then, we've got college basketball. As of today is the time that we're recording. You're just a couple days away from the college basketball season tipping off. One face and one name that we will be missing desperately this year is JuJu Watkins at USC. She tore her ACL late in the season last year, so she will be out for the entirety of this season. She was the face of the sport. You couldn't get away from JuJu. I mean, whether it was what she was doing on the court or in Nike commercials or in Gatorade commercials, JuJu Watkins became a certified celebrity. And of course, Paige Beckers goes on to the next level. She gets drafted to the WNBA. So a lot of these big name, household names will no longer be, or won't be competing this year rather, in women's college basketball. So who steps up in that absence? Who steps up as the face of the league and a potential National Player of the Year candidate? Ice, I will start with you. Who are you keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I would say you have to go back to the national champs in UConn, and Sarah Strong is immediately who I thought of in terms of the most versatile, well put together, well rounded player that is still so young in her career, still growing and has the opportunity to mature more. But in covering Big East Media Day, and she's named the preseason player of the year, and listening to Gino Auriemma talk about her, it's just that she's getting better in every aspect of her game. She's really got high standards for herself along with that team. And because they have produced so many superstars, so many legends to her game, I'd have to think that she is the next Maya Moore-esque type player that we are going to see leave UConn. And so to me, she is the front runner for this. I also would like to highlight Lauren Betts at UCLA and give some love to post players. I think that Lauren Betts will easily have a future in the WNBA, but this season will solidify how bright that future could be. Will it be a Cameron Brink type of superstar in which you could dominate the league and be a starting, center for someone and grow to that? Or will it be a consistent sixth player that kind of comes off the bench but is able to win a team a championship? So I think Lauren Betts has some proving to do for what she can be at the next level. And I'm looking forward to seeing how she and company at UCLA make things shake this year. Are they going to be good again?
And now her little sister at UCLA.
Yeah,
Sienna Betts. So fun. Love that. But I love your point on Sarah Strong. Let's not forget that even though Paige Becker is, yes, of course, #1 overall pick, face of the one of the faces of the sport last year, and will continue to be one of the faces of the sport in the WNBA, in the 2 games that UConn played in and won in the Final Four, both Final Four and the national championship game, Sarah Strong was their leading scorer. Sarah Strong was their leading rebounder. Sarah Strong was UConn's leading rebounder in every single game in the NCAA tournament. So all credit in the world to AZ Fudd and Paige Beckers, what they meant to that team last year, what AZ Fudd will continue to mean to this team upcoming. But to see that kind of level of production from Sarah Strong, a freshman in the postseason, I think is just indicative of so much more that we have to see from her taking that next step forward in her sophomore season. But Cass, who are you keeping an eye on this year, a potential National Player of the Year candidate?
Definitely Sarah Strong as a potential National Player of the Year candidate. Last week, Ice asked me a bunch of questions. So I have one for Ice this week.
Uh-oh.
When I thought about this, I wrote a story last week kind of leading into the season. I really thought about it as who could be National Player of the Year. But then also I feel like being a face of college basketball is a little bit different. You're not necessarily a National Player of the Year candidate. So Ice, when it comes to Sarah Strong or any of these others, like, what does it take in your mind as our media pro to be a face of college basketball? Because Sarah is an incredible player, right? Dawn Staley has already said she could be the best to come out of UConn, but we all know she can be very quiet and just not like the Paige Becker's outward personality.
Yeah. No, it's a great question, Cass, because the persona is important, right? Like, aside from the branding and what you say that you care about and what you donate to and what brands you're collaborating with, like, your persona on and off the court is important. To me, a couple of people that stick out immediately who could handle the superstardom of it all, like Hannah Hidalgo, right? Like, just kind of has that bulldog mentality that I'm going to get at you. Like, there's tons of clips you can find her energy. Another one, Madison Booker. And the reason for Madison Booker is she is smooth. Like, if anything about basketball we love a smooth scorer. And so I also think that Madison has grown in her personality a little bit over the last couple of years, been to Final Fours now, understands what's expected of her, and is not shy from that regard. So those are 2. And then lastly, Olivia Miles. Like, one, because of her game, and the finesse and the nifty, shifty, everything about her. I remember seeing Olivia Miles make buzzer beaters, right? And game winners, like, for Notre Dame, and kind of have that level of spotlight. I think at a place at TCU that has tons of money and now has the eyeballs and has the history behind it of doing well, I also wonder if she will shape up to be one of our superstars that we see in different commercials, in different things. She's got like the goggles and the afro. Like, she has just a bit of different to her that I think you could throw in a commercial and we would love to watch. So those would be some of mine.
I love that. And that's a great question by you, Cass, because it is important to distinguish. National Player of the Year does not mean that you are going to be the face of the league and vice versa. But to that same point, Ice, I'll ask you the question, and Cass too. How important is it for the face of the league to play for one of those elite premier programs? Like, how much of Paige Bueckers being one of the faces of the sport was not just because of her play and her personality, how she was so marketable, how she was so active on social media, but also because she plays for UConn and JuJu being at USC in the middle of Los Angeles. Like, how important is it that you play at a team for a program and at a team that's going to be on national television and going to be getting, more of these premier time slots as well?
I think JuJu is the best example of the opposite of that, actually, that you don't need to go to necessarily a premier program. It's your success and who you are. Because I believe it was JuJu's freshman year when they were still on Pac-12 network, right? And so most people in the country could not see most of her games. I remember that being a big deal. She had like 2 national games and that was it. But she was still JuJu Watkins and she lifted USC to stardom. I think Caitlin Clark too, like Iowa has a legacy of being a great program, but I don't know that everyone, your average viewer knew that and knew the history, and she brought them to new heights, and I think both of those players too, to everything I said, had all of those just like checkmark interesting things. So when you have a player like, Texas is premier. All these teams have had success, but certainly we'll probably see some players lift their teams out of where they used to be, and they'll be in this stratosphere.
Yeah, I think like Michaela Blake's at Vanderbilt is a good example. Vanderbilt has consistently been a good women's basketball program, but like not great, just very, very good and consistent in the SEC. But somebody like Michaela Blake's who could drop 40 back-to-back games and then coupled with the other stars and good role players that they have around her, that could be someone who kind of lifts a program. I think of Angel Reese and LSU and now like Mylasia Fuwiley and Flau'jae Johnson at LSU. Like if there was a team to do a reality TV show on right now, I would be down with the Tigers. And I know that makes Caroline so happy for me to say, but you would have to
cheer for a good team and not a good story. Tired.
Rough week for Caroline.
Rough week for Caroline.
Well, here's the good news. College basketball is starting Monday. And to the point I was about to make, like, you have one of the most exciting backcourts full of personality.
Full of personality.
Backcourt's full of personality. Sidelines full of personality. You got a whole lot of personality in that program, but it is very reflective of the state itself. If Kim Mulkey's Blazers weren't enough to encompass the personality of the team and the school and the state, I don't know what would. But yes, to your point, Angel Reese, like, LSU women's basketball wasn't a premier program in the slightest. It was a far cry from the Sylvia Fowles years of LSU women's basketball being nationally relevant. Angel Reese and that 2023 team brought that team into the national relevance. And now Flau'jae with her personality and her rap career, and Mylasia Fuwiley having the pedigree of coming from South Carolina and the personality that she has, it has elevated a program so much. To your point, Cass, yes. I think it is so much more about individual players elevating teams than it is teams and their brands elevating individuals. Because I'm with you guys, and my National Player of the Year that I would watch maybe like a dark horse candidate, because I'm with you on Sarah Strong and AZ Fudd. I'm totally 100% with you on Hannah Hidalgo at Notre Dame, Lauren Betts at UCLA, some of these big-time names that are going to be returning this season with their respective programs. Maybe a dark horse name that I'll keep an eye on is Tania Latson. She just transferred to South Carolina from Florida State. She was the sport's leading scorer in the regular season last year. It's going to be an identity change going from Florida State and their fast pace of play. They want to shoot three. They want to, run the score up. Dawn plays a very different style of basketball, so how she acclimates to that, I think, would be fascinating. But with South Carolina losing Mylasia Fuwiley, like we said, to the transfer portal, she's heading to LSU. Losing Chloe Kitts for the season to an injury, maybe their style and their identity shifts a little bit more to reflect who they do have versus who they won't have. So I'm fascinated to see how Tania Latson fits into the South Carolina identity.
I think Tessa Johnson could be the best shooting guard of the year.
Ooh.
I
like Tessa a lot.
I just kind of think it could happen. It could be her year. You see so many, if you've watched her over the last 2 years, there's so many moments in which she was necessary and critical to the success of the Gamecocks that I just think now, her coupled with Raven Johnson, who already wants to get everybody else's shots, and then Taniyah Latson, who's going to play in like transition play in the full court. Like Tessa is going to be relied on to stretch that floor, to get to her spots, but to score the basketball. Yeah, I have a feeling she's going to be, if there's like a biggest surprise, I have a feeling it could be her.
She was huge in their national title run, to your point about her stepping up big.
And you saying in her 2 years, I didn't realize it's only been 2 years at South Carolina with Tessa Johnson. It feels like she's a vet. Like, it feels like she's been around. And I think that it's because that national championship run 2 years ago that she was such a big part of it. So let's keep an eye on maybe some teams to watch. So those are some players to watch, some names to watch. What about some teams to watch? Of course, UConn, reigning national champions, bringing back AZ Fudd and Sarah Strong, and that Gino Auriemma machine is humming. Of course, we're going to keep an eye on UConn. But Cass, what are some other teams that you're keeping your eye on as we enter the season?
Well, South Carolina for sure, for all the reasons we just said. Also, Dawn Staley knows how to kind of tinker with things, get this done. I think that national title run they had 2 years ago with their daycare of a whole bunch of new starters was like, it's kind of like Becky Hammond. Like, Dawn will figure it out. They'll be fine. Texas, I'm high on Texas. I still am. I love Rory Harmon. She's going to be in her second year after that ACL, which is really when players kind of begin to take off again. That first year can be tough. She's not playing with a knee brace anymore. I love her connection with Madison Booker, and we kind of mentioned her. Her mid-range is just phenomenal when she gets that spot on the baseline. Like, it is over. High on Texas. I think Duke could do something. I think my thing always about Duke is that defense is great, and I love it. But you do need to score the ball a little bit. They do have more offense on paper this year, so we'll see. But I think sometimes like those big games are just excruciating, and they didn't leave us with the best taste in our mouth at the tournament.
That they did not do. But
it was a grind to watch some of these games. It was like holding my eyes open, like, please, somebody score a basket.
They want to win 40-41. Listen,
it's disgusting.
Well, but that's what's funny, and we laugh about it, and I laugh because like I just grew up running gun, score as many points as possible, right, and like make defense fun. But come tournament time, when you make it that ugly and you make it that mucky, that is what also allows you to win. And so I think that like Carol Lawson, and I know she's got a winning recipe there. It is just about putting the right pieces in the right spaces to have a winning recipe. So I'm interested to see what they do. And they were voted number 1 overall in the ACC, which I thought was big for them. And they've kind of been building up to that. Another sleeper in the ACC is NC State, just in what they've been able to do with their guards. Wes Moore, as the head coach, does a terrific job. They've got a couple of transfers and newer pieces, a Zoe Brooks that's returning, that I think could be a really fun, electric team to watch across the country. We've talked about Tennessee, and we'll probably keep talking about Tennessee just in terms of their depth and their style. A Janiah Barker, a transfer that they got this year, I think could be a really nice boost for them. They returned several players as well. One of them right now is going through some interesting off-court issues, so I'm keeping an eye on that to see if she will be available throughout the season. But I think Tennessee is going to have the depth that we enjoyed watching. Another mention of a team that we've talked about, but I think is going to be stronger because of her, Charlize Ledger-Walker, who is back from an ACL injury, very good West Coast point guard, is playing for UCLA and was out last season. I'm wondering if she will give them the depth at the point guard position that they need to compete. They have the inside presence of Lauren Betts, but is it much better when Charlize is a kind of on the perimeter and as a mature player? Last team to keep in mind, Vanderbilt. I just think Vanderbilt is going to surprise some folks. I like the transfers that they brought in. I like the length and the size that they have there. Michaela Blakes, we've chatted about her, but I think Vandy may also surprise some folks. And I think preseason they're top 20, but I don't think I'd be surprised if they were a top 10 team at some point during the course of this season. I think they have that much versatility.
I love that Vanderbilt pick. I love Shea Ralph, their head coach.
Yeah. UConn bred.
Yes. Yeah, from the Geno tree. She's great. And Michaela Blakes can drop 80 on any given night. But just stick in the state of Tennessee.
Double up that Duke offense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think Tennessee is one to watch. But it feels like the Lady Vols look reminiscent of like those Lady Vols teams, and they kind of lost that for several years. And look, I understand, take it with a grain of salt. It's an exhibition game against Columbus State. And what you look like in an exhibition game against Columbus State could very much so be a far cry of what you look like in the NCAA tournament. But they won 148-48. They won by 100 points. And their coach, Kim Caldwell, got up at the podium after that press conference, or after the game in the press conference, and was pissed off. She was so angry about how the offense looked. Like, you just beat a team by 100 points. So I'm encouraged by what this Tennessee team can do. Kim Caldwell's second year. I mean, in year one, they got bounced by Texas, who got to the Final Four in the Sweet 16. So her style of play is interesting. It's funky. I call it hockey on hardwood. It's overwhelming to watch, but also incredibly difficult to defend. So I'm excited about the Lady Vols and what they can do this year.
Also very high on Tennessee. That's like well known at this point. I think once again,
hot take. Tennessee women's basketball, good.
We think Tennessee's good. Also hot take. The SEC could be just sweep the Final Four, have 2 or 3 teams in there. Another team we should throw out there is TCU. Olivia Miles, we already talked about her. And then they have 3 or 4 players who are 6'7" or taller, which I think is really going to help them in that pick and roll.
What? Jeez. You mean the dunk and roll? What? The what?
The dunk and roll.
The pick and dunk. Oh my goodness. That's so exciting. First of all, and like just head coach Mark Campbell is a pick and roll genius. And so, I mean, how better to defeat that than size? They're replacing a player who graduated last year as a center for their team that was 6'7". And so that makes sense. Like, you just kind of re-up right where you want. I'll highlight 2 teams, and I'm shamelessly plugging a game that I'm working, so just ignore me here. But don't really, because it's 2 top 15 games that are coming up. But I have Notre Dame women's basketball at Michigan. Both teams right now in this preseason AP poll are top 15. Michigan, known for having a plethora of freshman guards last year that were literally 3 or 4 of the best in the country. Now they return as sophomores, so they're a bit more experienced. And then Notre Dame, we can talk about Hannah all day, but there are definitely some other players on the team that I know we'll hear about later in this show. But I'm excited to have that game on NBC November 15th.
Michigan should really challenge UCLA.
Ooh.
Why?
I mean, like the freshmen, they're going to be sophomores now. They played really well. Yeah. I just think if you're looking at the Big Ten, it's kind of UCLA. Maryland, who brought in some transfers. Brenda Fries is doing a good job kind of replenishing there every single year. Yeah. And then you have a Michigan team that's growing together. I think that's probably kind of top 3 in the Big Ten, and USC too, but certainly not the same team without JuJu Watkins.
Yeah, that's my biggest question about the Big Ten is last year it was USC, UCLA, and everybody else. Now it's USC we view differently going into the season. That can change, but right now we view them differently. Who's the biggest threat to UCLA in the Big Ten? I think would be my biggest question. I could apply that to the SEC as well. Who's the biggest threat to South Carolina? And that in different ways. Like, I'm saying who in the Big Ten is going to step up. My question about the SEC is, how are you going to make enough room for all of these teams that could be Final Four contenders? I mean, 3 of the top 5 in the AP preseason poll are SEC teams. And you look at 5 of the top 10 with Ole Miss right out of the top 10 at number 12. So like this SEC was stacked last year, and I think just continues to get that much stronger. So it could be Texas's SEC. It could be LSU's SEC. It could be South Carolina's SEC. It could be Tennessee's SEC. I'm excited about Coach Yo and what she continues to build at Ole Miss. Kentucky and how what they can do this year. So yes, we're going to talk about Texas and South Carolina and Tennessee and LSU really at the top of this conference, but the middle of this conference could beat anyone on any given night as well.
I just love college hoops because it's just full of surprises. You know, we'll all be surprised the first week. We've got games happening in Paris, overseas. I love how we're continuing to grow the game and grow its reach. Key non-conference matchups that are happening early. I think it's a great time in which you're looking at the game and no one is shy to play anyone. We've gotten rid of that. Like everybody wants, the coaches, the players, the fans want these high-level marquee matchups early to see what teams are really made of. And so I'm looking forward to the season. I feel like the surprises are what I'm looking forward to the most. Like what freshman is really going to, shock the world that maybe we weren't talking about because they weren't a top 100 recruit. Or what coaches have lost some valuable players and still come back next year and are a team to be reckoned with. I think Lindsay Gottlieb has an opportunity to prove to the world that she's a good coach, regardless of having one of the best generational talents out for the season.
These non-con games are insane.
Yes.
I mean, just Duke opens the season against Baylor. A couple weeks later, they have South Carolina and then LSU the next week. And then South Carolina opens the season, but early in the season, they play USC and then Duke and then Louisville back-to-back. We have NC State and Tennessee to open the season. That doesn't even scratch the surface of some of these non-conference games. And I am so incredibly here for it. So we're just a couple of days away. It's going to be such an exciting season in women's college basketball. Any closing thoughts? Maybe players you're keeping an eye on, not necessarily in the National Player of the Year conversation, just players you're excited about?
I don't have players, but I mean, if we're talking about matchups, Duke versus Baylor, you mentioned UConn versus Louisville. I also wanted to add Richmond and Texas on Friday night.
Our girl Maggie Dugan.
Yeah.
Maggie Dugan. And for Richmond, it's ridiculous to say because we haven't even, thrown the ball up yet, but you do have to be thinking about March and where you're going to be in March Madness. Huge game and opportunity for Richmond to start out with Texas. They have Texas and TCU on their non-conference schedule. Those are going to be the big ones. They also have Columbia and Penn State, Green Bay and Fairfield. And those are all the games that they need to do well in to have a good position. And of course, Richmond is ranked right now. So kudos to them because it's especially hard lately to be a ranked mid-major in women's basketball.
Yes. Shout out to the A10 squad. I got to cover them for A10 Media Day, and they're serious about what they want to do. Maggie Dugan is serious about having aspirations to play in WNBA. Aaron Russell is serious about them, like you said, building their roster and kind of building their resume before they get to conference. And they hope to kind of run through the conference, to be quite honest. It was a year last year in which we saw 3 Ivy League teams play in the NCAA tournament. We saw 2 teams from the A10 the NCAA tournament. I think that tells you anything that mid-majors are not what they say. It's not mid anywhere. This is very good basketball happening across the country. And so I love that it kind of shook up what we saw last year in the tournament. I hope the same thing applies this year, just in terms of getting different teams, different faces, different storylines having a chance. But oh my gosh, I wish I was going to the Paris game. I should have I missed that. I should have made that happen. I need to book my flight months ago. Yeah, I was sleeping. I was in WNBA mode trying to get this CBA stuff. Come on.
We
gotta sign stuff. Yeah, we
gotta sign stuff so that Ice can go to Paris. Gosh.
Yeah.
No disrespect, but thanks.
Hurry up and get your rev share figured out because I have croissants to eat, okay? I'm busy in Paris. All right, we'll keep you updated, of course, because we're not just a WNBA show. We are a women's basketball show. So remember, you can get all of your women's college basketball news and reactions right here on Hoops 360. And that's what we will be doing every single week all the way through the NCAA tournament and beyond. But a couple of WNBA news and notes just to close you out here before we catch up with our friend KK Bransford of Notre Dame women's basketball. Has some coaching news, some coaching updates. Of course, we know that the Portland Fire hired Alex Sarama a couple of weeks ago, but the Dallas Wings have also found their new head coach and USF head coach Jose Fernandez. Ice, I know you were big on this hire. Why do you like the move?
Yeah, I like this because one, I know Coach Fernandez personally, have played against him for a few years and then had a chance to, call some of his games. I just like his style. Been a successful head coach in women's basketball for 25 years, consistently brought in international players that played a fantastic style that was nifty, that was fun, that was fast. I immediately thought that the style that he has implemented year after year is a style that is going to work well in the WNBA. So I'm excited for that. I think too that the league has seen success in hiring, longtime successful college basketball coaches to the fold. Carl Smesko for Atlanta, again, a franchise record wins this season in his first year. And so I think the same is expected of Jose Fernandez. I also will say, in just looking at the Dallas roster, that it's young, but it's got young players with really good talent. I'm also wondering if an older coach that is used to dealing with some of these younger players, because he's coming from the college atmosphere, can adapt a little bit better. So I'm rooting for Coach Fernandez. I think this is a good pickup actually for Dallas. And Kurt Miller, who's the GM of the Dallas Wings, was also a longtime college basketball coach as well. So it's not surprising that he went back on his, Rolodex and called up a friend that he came across in college basketball.
Yeah, excited for the move. And he gets to now coach one of the brightest young stars in the league in Paige Beckers. This was a pivotal hire for the Dallas Wings to make sure they keep Paige Beckers on an upward trajectory in this league. And then I think the coach that at least I was most intrigued to see where she would land, has found her landing spot. And that is Sandy Brondello, former New York Liberty head coach, whose contract was not renewed, less than a calendar year removed from winning a championship with the New York Liberty. She has now been named the head coach of the Toronto Tempo. So what do we feel? How do we feel about this hire, Cass? I personally love it. I think she is the perfect person to bring in a new expansion team and drop a lot of excitement. What are your thoughts on the hire?
Yeah, very exciting move, I think, for her and for the city. To your point, when you're a new city, there's a lot of excitement around WNBA teams, but certainly to bring in a coach of Sandy's caliber and one of the names of women's basketball is going to be huge for their fandom that's already thriving there. I think for Sandy Brondello and the front office, you kind of just start with a new piece of paper and can start bringing in the players that you want. And there's going to be a lot of players in free agency who think about Toronto because Sandy is there. So I think a good move for her, a good move for Toronto.
Very smart front office. Very smart front office. You, for real, like, you're starting new and you don't want to start under the bar. You don't want to start with someone that maybe we don't know or someone not familiar or who has those personal relationships. What you do know of Sandy is that she can win. She's won multiple championships in this league over an expanding 10 years or so. And you know that she can get the right superstars in the right place. I think that's the most important thing, that there are people, like you said, Cass, that will go to Toronto because Sandy is there. We heard several players of the New York Liberty last season say the same thing. I also think, too, about like an Emma Mieseman, who was a finals MVP player in this league. Like, hey, she only went to New York and played half a season. Do you bring someone of that caliber over to you with Toronto? I think this is a great move. I had almost thought that Dallas had missed out. I'm not going to lie. I had almost thought that Dallas had missed out. But I think that their hire was also a good strategic move. So to me, these two get an A++, thumbs up. Great job, Toronto. People will definitely be watching basketball there. I know I'm giving out A+ on Halloween. It's crazy. It's nuts.
Jeez, you're like a Dancing with the Stars judge, just throwing out all these 10s.
Everybody gets candy. Ice is passing out like the big jumbo
she's
got her house.
Go to her house.
Toronto gets a candy bar. Dallas gets a candy bar.
She's got the candy bars from Paris.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Real chocolate. Real chocolate.
Real chocolate. She's handing out berets. Straight from Paris. And all the kids are like, what am I going to do with this hat? Okay, what about the Seattle Storm? Do they get a candy bar? They hired Sonia Raman, speaking of the Sandy Brondello coaching tree, who comes from the Sandy Brondello coaching tree. She was with the Liberty this past season. She also spent some time with the Grizzlies, so kind of following that NBA to WNBA pipeline that we've seen be incredibly successful over the last several years. Obviously, Becky Hammon and her experience with the San Antonio Spurs. What do we make of the hire of Sonia Raman? What do we know about Sonia Raman and what she can bring to Seattle?
Well, I will give a peek behind the curtain here and say that when this dropped in the group chat, Ice and I asked each other our thoughts, and our first thoughts were what this meant about the New York Liberty. She was in the running for that job. And I think also now that New York is the last team without a head coach, I think that says a lot about them. I think for Seattle, though, Ice, you had deeper thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's a pipeline that should continue of bringing these coaches that have experience in the NBA or WNBA as former players. So I like to see it. I also thought it was strategic and important for Seattle to keep a woman head coach. I feel like that has been their brand year after year, season after season, coach after hiring coach. And so I wasn't surprised there. I was happy that they did it. They did it with someone that has learned from a coach that has experienced success in Seattle and learning under Sandy Brondello. So to me, this seems like a good pickup. Seattle with the team and the roster that they have right now and some of those main pieces, it's a very experienced group. And so I'm interested to see how a first-time head coach will handle an experienced group of a Nneka Ogwumike, a Skylar Diggins, a Gabby Williams, et cetera, if those players remain on that roster. But I definitely thought this too got a thumbs up in terms of the hiring.
But it does beg a fair question. She comes from the New York Liberty. The New York Liberty still do not have their next head coach. What's the holdup here? Because am I wrong in saying that the Liberty moved on from Sandy Brondello before any other coach in the league got fired? Not that Sandy Brondello got fired necessarily, but she kind of did get fired. Her contract did not get extended. So the Liberty now have had the longest vacancy of any team in the league? What are we waiting for?
I do believe Noelle Quinn was let go a couple of days before.
Maybe so.
But they probably are at the longest now. I think that's a good question that only the Liberty front office can answer. And until we see who they hire and maybe hear more about the process of hiring them, I think it speaks to the idea that we all talked about, that it's not always a good idea to let go of someone because the question is always, well, then who? And we still don't know who.
Yeah, I feel like in the ways in which they let go of Sandy Brondello and the comments that were made by their GM afterwards, that it's clear that they want to go in a different direction. I think from the analyst seat and watching the Liberty this season, the only different direction I would have made is getting a better strength and conditioning coach or athletic trainers so that you take care of players' health. Because otherwise, they had the roster to be a team that was in the finals. It was just the fact that they couldn't get everybody to play and to be healthy at the same time for a long enough time. So it's interesting to me in terms of what about that roster, that group, where do they want to go? Where do they see that there can be a change and a difference? I'm not exactly sure. I really actually don't. I don't know. There are other teams that I could talk about all day of where they need to do and strategically what they need. I'm just not sure necessarily what the Liberty are looking at with how they finished this year, other than we're just upset that we didn't have everybody healthy at one time. But I say all to say that there are some superstars on that team, and it is New York basketball, baby. So they can't hire anybody who hasn't been here before. They can't hire anybody that hasn't been proven. This is a big shoes to fill type of job. I'm interested to see what they do decide. It's too late, right, for them to pick a college coach that has been exceptional in college. So we probably know that's not happening. So now my thought is it former coaches in this league who maybe got a nod, didn't have the right system or didn't have the right players, didn't do so well, got let go? Are we going to see somebody like, a teaspoon maybe come back to the fold, right? But at the same time, I don't know. I think this is the biggest job that's available out of all of them because of the pressure that exists in New York and the superstars that you have available. You can't get the wrong coach for Stewie and Sab. You can't. And JJ. You can't.
And you can't move on from Sandy Brondello and then fire the wrong coach.
Boom.
True.
Boom. Boom.
If they're looking at the NBA ranks, just a note here, they could totally hire someone while the NBA season is going on. Alex Rama met with reporters last week, and he was asked about kind of juggling the two. He said he would be at every Fire milestone but he was still working in the NBA. So someone working an NBA job is not holding this up, I will say.
I mean, that makes me think of like a James Wade, right? Who has had success in this league and then left to be an NBA assistant. Like, maybe does he come back? And then you trying to trust that, like, hey, you want a championship. You want a championship with Candace Parker and Kalia Copper. Like, you know how to handle superstars. But again, like, I can't stress the importance of it have to be somebody who is proven. This is not like, oh, first time job. Come on, and we're rooting for you, baby. Like, no, you need to know what you're doing in New York.
And you're in win now. Like, Stewie's not going to be around forever. And Sabrina Ionescu's not going to be in her prime forever. The Liberty are 1 year removed from a championship. They are in a championship win right now window. And just making the postseason clearly wasn't enough for Sandy Brondello. It's championship or bust. So it's not even just, can you manage these celebrity superstars on this roster? It's, can you manage these expectations and meet those expectations? I think this is the most fascinating. Not only I think is it the most attractive job in the league, I think it's the most fascinating coaching search to follow and continue to follow over the next couple of weeks. All right, let's get to our friend KK Bransford, Notre Dame women's basketball player who is a star. She is a celebrity, and that celebrity status is only going to grow. So let's catch up with our friend KK Bransford. KK, thank you so much for hanging out with us today and for your time. You spent this past year redshirting. You've been overcoming a lower body injury. How are you? How has the recovery been? Physically, mentally, emotionally, all of the above. How are you doing?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited, and I'm feeling really good. I'm excited for the season. It's crazy that some exhibition games have already started, so I'm just really excited to not have to be in the preseason and the summer stuff and actually be able to play some games. So I'm just anticipating all of that.
Yeah, what's that process been like behind the scenes? Not just you rehabbing, recovering, getting the rest off, getting back to 100%, but also ramping up and getting ready for the season.
Yes, it's been a lot. It's been a long process. Obviously, it's been a whole entire year. So it's probably the most I've sat out since playing basketball ever in my life. But for me, it was very beneficial. It's probably one of the best decisions I have ever made. So just to be able to have that time to take a step away from basketball, but also being able to work on things of basketball, but focusing on things outside of basketball for the after college, after basketball. I did a lot of that during that time of redshirting. So just learning the game and then also learning myself as well.
What were some of those things that you were doing away from basketball to focus on the future?
Yes, so I want to go into sports broadcasting after basketball. So I was able to do a couple podcasts. I have an Instagram called Sideline Chats with KK, and being able to just connect with athletes and be able to really get their story out. So I did a ton of that. I did a ton of stuff with Notre Dame and their social media and stuff, just because, I had the extra time with not playing, but I was able to just kind of figure out things about like journaling and meditation and stretching and the importance and stuff of that. And I feel like that's been my biggest lesson of finding those things that are going to make me mentally and physically better.
Yeah, I hear that from so many athletes that unfortunately suffer from injuries, that while it might be the hardest thing they do, you take away a lot from it. You grow a lot as a person mentally. So I'm glad that you had that opportunity, not to just work on yourself, but to hone in on your craft and your passion outside of basketball. So, girl, this is your opportunity to let your broadcasting skills really shine. So if you were KK Bransford, not basketball player, but KK Bransford, reporter, sports journalist, sports broadcaster, what would be the story that you would tell about Notre Dame women's basketball this season?
That's a really great question. I feel like we're a really new team. A lot of the girls are either transferring. We have one freshman coming in this year, but with it being so new, I feel like we're so close. And I think that the story would probably be just how close we are and how the sisterhood that we have built in this short amount of time and how crazy that is. I think this is my first time where the team has just meshed so quickly in the off season. And I'm just super excited about that. We've done a ton of team bonding stuff. Honestly, I don't even call it team bonding anymore. It's just us hanging out. Like something that is not mandatory, but it's just very like authentic. And I think just we mesh really well. And I think for us on the court, that's going to be so helpful. So probably the story of all the times we've gone to one of my teammates has a lake house, so we've gone to our lake house a ton of times. Our football team and football season has been really fun, being able to bond over that as well. So we've had a really great preseason and summer, and I think just like the friendship and the sisterhood that we've built in such a quick time.
Yeah, a lot of new faces, 6 transfers, and the freshman Liam Macy, like you mentioned. It's not easy. Those kind of things don't just happen overnight. You know, it's one thing to bring a lot of really talented players together, but it's a completely different story to kind of mesh together as a team and become friends outside of the court. So tell me about these lake trips. Like, who's driving the boat? Who's the best, water skier? What's on the itinerary on these lake trips?
Yes. So we've done a couple times. Kelly Radigan is the one who drives the boat. She's in transfer. But like it's just been a ton of fun. We've done jet skiing, we've done paddleboarding. So a lot of stuff, especially over the summer. A couple weeks ago, we had a team retreat where just us as girls went up to the lake house and spent a whole day there. And we were able to talk about our goals and kind of get to know each other a little bit better. But it was just such a relaxing time. I love the water. So I'm always in the water. I'm always going on the boat. I'm always one of those ones. So we got to make pizzas together, which I didn't do a very good job. My pizza was terrible, but it happens, and it was a good, like, just bonding experience.
What goes on the pizza?
My pizza was, okay, this, like, is disgusting to people, at least to my teammates, but to me, it was good. I had pepperoni, I had pineapples, cheese.
You're one of those.
Yes, and then I, added, one mushroom, because I wanted mushroom, but I couldn't, just literally one single one. I don't know. I'm not a really good cook, so I was just putting whatever on there.
Honestly, if it's a pizza, you throw whatever on there, it's gonna be good. I know you're gonna rile some people up with the pineapple on pizza take that always rubs people the wrong way in some form or fashion. But you say that you and Blake, you talked about some goals. What are your goals? Of course, ultimately, a national championship is the ultimate goal. But what are your goals for this season?
Yes, I feel like for me personally, just being able to make an impact on my team, especially in the ACC. I feel like I had my freshman year, I played my sophomore year, and didn't have that chance to play and showcase my skill my junior year. And even throughout my sophomore year, I was facing injuries and still facing that lower leg injury. So honestly, I just want to have my name be heard and just kind of show people what I've been really working on in this off season. I think collectively as a team, we want to win the ACC. That is something that I've done my sophomore year. So getting back to that, and last year we won the regular season. So just continuing that in the ACC is such a tough league that we have. But being able to compete each and every night, and honestly, just being back on the court, like that first game, I'm just going to be so grateful to be able to be back on the court again.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, the ACC is so stacked. 5 teams in the preseason top 25 poll, including your team, Notre Dame. How do you get through that grind of what's not just a very long conference schedule, but I also see Michigan on your schedule early, USC on your schedule early. You go to Ole Miss early in your schedule. So what keeps you going through the grind of conference play, and what can you learn from some of these tough early season non-con matchups?
Yes, I feel like the season is so long, and me being a senior, I understand how long it is. But I think it starts in the off season. It started in the summer, that work and preparation that we've been doing. And because we have kind of quite a new team, just getting that chemistry early is going to be really important. And I think just buying into everybody, like your roles. I think for me, I really want to be a big leader on this team, and I am a returner and I am a senior. So I have that experience of what it's like. I've won the ACC. We've competed at a really high level. So just being able to bring that experience and leadership, and I think throughout the season, staying grounded in what we used to prepare in the summer and used to prepare in the preseason, and just reminding ourselves that especially once we get to ACC play.
I know you want to step up as a leader. Another leader on your team is Hannah Hidalgo, who has really quickly become a household name and beloved around the women's basketball spaces. What is she like as a teammate?
Hannah's amazing. Literally, Hannah, I always say, like, I was her host on her recruiting visit. And so she has a special place in my heart. She's like my little baby. But no, she's amazing. She's a crazy competitor. And I feel like that is something that not a lot of people have. She has that dog mentality. And for me, like, as a teammate, that is so helpful because each and every practice she's pushing you, each and every game she's pushing you, and you kind of just want to play for her, play as hard as her because she plays both ends of the ball. I think she's a generational player, so just to be able to see her grow and develop, and then even her leadership, I feel like that's been her biggest jump this year, is learning how to lead the team, having that responsibility on her, but she's just embraced it so much. So I'm super proud of her. And like I said, that's my little baby. So I just want to keep seeing her grow and keep seeing her succeed.
And I know that she's a leader and you're a leader in your own right. What would you say are both of your kind of leadership styles?
Yeah, I feel like we're both really competitive. So I feel like we can be really hard on our teammates, but also just knowing our teammates, how they like to be talked to, how they like to respond the best. And I feel like in our retreat that we did, we discussed that and talked to them about that. And I think that's really important. It's just knowing, yes, you can be hard, but there's sometimes if you don't have that relationship, it's hard to be that hard on someone. So I feel like me and her have a really good balance of just knowing our teammates and knowing what gets them going and what doesn't get them going, and just taking that and being mindful of that.
Having so many leaders on this team, I know I'm sure it makes your head coach Nia Livey's job that much easier. What is it like to be coached by Nia Livey?
Yeah, she's just amazing. She's such a player's coach. I feel like she's been there. She's been in the WNBA. She's coached for the NBA. She's won championships at Notre Dame. So she just has that experience. And I feel like we all really embrace her knowledge, embrace what she's been through. And she really gives us all that kind of advice and stuff, and how to win and how to get to those spaces. So I feel like we have something that not a lot of schools have, is just that experience. And then she's also a very like let us play kind of team. She's a player's coach. She has that relationship. I was her first recruit after Liv and Sony when they committed. So I feel like I was the only freshman that year, and me and her just had a really good bond of how she was able to bring me up into now me being a senior and being that leader.
What does that mean to you, a let us play kind of coach?
Yeah, it just means being able to not be afraid of having the mistakes and not being afraid of getting outside of the box. She encourages that. She wants you to play as creatively and as hard as you can, and not having that, oh, we're going to get on the bench or anything like that. So just being very open to suggestions, being very open, because at the end of the day, as players, we're the ones on the court. And I think she really understands that as a head coach. Yes, she's there to guide us. Yes, she has the knowledge. But at the end of the day, we're going to be the ones out there playing. So she's just really embracing any feedback that we have, any play calls or anything like that.
And I do think that is like one of the wonderful things of having a coach who was a player. They might have a different perspective from a coach that maybe didn't put on that uniform. Nia Livey played at Notre Dame. She played in the WNBA. What is it like to have a coach that's been there before, literally wearing that uniform, playing in that gymnasium?
Mm-hmm. I mean, she knows the standard. She knows the standard of Notre Dame women's basketball. It has such a rich history. So she knows, she's coached so many great players here at Notre Dame, and she knows what the expectation is. So she sets that standard, and we just kind of try to live up to it.
And you brought up Sonia Citron, one of your former teammates at Notre Dame, now crushing it in the W. What's that like for you, a former teammate, watching her really thrive at the WNBA level?
Yes, I mean, Sonia's doing amazing, and I don't expect anything less of that. Sonia was actually my first roommate my ninth grade year when we played the USA national team. So I've known Sonia since my freshman year of high school. And so just being able to see her grow and that bond that we have, she's literally like a sister to me. She's always still like texting and calling and asking how we're doing, and she's hoping to come back for a game. So just being able to watch her through the season, like I said, we expected that of her. I think the world just was able to see her shine. So I'm just super proud of her and happy for her.
We are huge Sonia Citron fans here on Hoops 360. And you mentioned you and your teammates go to a bunch of the football games at Notre Dame. It is such a fun athletic department. I mean, Notre Dame in so many avenues is just absolutely crushing it. How fun is it for you to be able to be part of that, not just experience it as a student, but as a student athlete?
Yes, I mean, it's everything. I feel like they do such a good job of incorporating us with the tradition of Notre Dame. They have so many traditions, and just being able to be a part of that. But also, I feel like the people make it. I feel like the people make the experience. The people make Notre Dame. Anybody that you meet here at Notre Dame, they're going to be welcoming. They're going to be really smart and have really good advice for after college. And I think that's just super important. We have moments and experiences that I will cherish forever. I don't think I'll ever be able to have my college years back. So just taking each moment at one time and being really appreciative of that.
Yeah, it is a special place. That is for sure. I've always enjoyed my times in South Bend, at least when it's not blizzarding.
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced plenty of blizzards in South Bend. But last one before we get you out of here, the women's game has experienced just unprecedented levels of growth. That there are more people watching, more people attending, more people investing, more money being invested into the sport. And that's happened so rapidly. That's happened over the span of your time at Notre Dame. Do you feel that as a player? Do you feel the popularity of the game?
Yes, I mean, I was just talking to my teammates about Angel Reese just had her Victoria's Secrets runway, and that's like so cool to me. Like just to be able to see that representation from women's basketball. I feel like a couple years ago, you would never have seen that. So just being able to see that popularity from the WNBA all the way to college women's basketball is special. And honestly, in the moment, I feel like you don't notice it, but really looking back at the history and all the things that we've accomplished for women's sports and as a whole has been just amazing. I think social media is a really big thing that has helped us as well. And being able to use those opportunities to grow the game and have more eyes on the game. And I think that I'm just proud that everybody's really enjoying it. And that's what I've seen so far.
Yeah, no longer are players just players at this point in the women's game. They're celebrities, certified celebrities. And so are you, KK Bransford, and a celebrity. Check her out, Notre Dame women's basketball. The season is just around the corner. KK, thank you so much for your time today. We really, really appreciate it, and good luck this season.
Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate KK Bransford and her time. That is going to do it for us today on this episode of Hoops 360. She is Cassandra Negley. That is Ice Young. I am Caroline Fenton. We are so ready for the women's college basketball season. So make sure to send in all of your questions, whether it's W related, college related, anything is on the table. So send us those questions. hoops360@yahoosports.com. Again, you can send an email to hoops360@yahoosports.com. Talk to you soon.